Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. I wanted to take this opportunity to just express my real thrill and delight and excitement in that I was able at long last, earlier this week or a few days ago, to receive in the mail some Blu-rays that I had ordered. And these are Blu-rays that are of the Region A, North American label, Kino Lorber, and specifically their sub-line of Kino Studio Classics. And to be more specific, the films of the adaptations of the works of Agatha Christie on Blu-ray. And so I've already been able to talk about a number of them that I got over the course of some months. So these are the earlier ones that were released, and that each are very, in their own way, quite an interesting film indeed. But the ones that I was able to get very recently, because they were released by Kino Lorber, I believe the beginning of September 2020, are these films. And so I was so glad at long last, my friends, to be able to get these. So there is Death on the Nile, and then we have the film Evil Under the Sun. And then last but not least, we have The Mirror Cracked. So Death on the Nile and Evil Under the Sun are the two films John Brabourne and Richard Goodwin produced, films that have as the lead Hercule Poirot, the actor Peter Ustinov. And Peter Ustinov, of course, would appear in other productions on screen and also on television in the role of Hercule Poirot. But these were his first outings, as it were, and big budgeted on-screen movie outings. And they are, in their own way, such a treat and such a delight. And then we have the third of these Blu-rays, which is not a Poirot story, but it is a Miss Marple story based on the novel The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side. This features a number of great stars: Rock Hudson, Elizabeth Taylor, Kim Novak in a very interesting role, Tony Curtis, and others. And it features, of course, Angela Lansbury as Miss Marple, in a very interesting interpretation of the character. I should mention that Death on the Nile was directed by John Guillermin, and then Evil Under the Sun and The Mirror Cracked were both directed by Guy Hamilton. I really have to say that I love these films. I love these films very much. Each in their own way, I think, is rather splendid and charming and delightful. Each has their own sense of style and approach. We have to remember that they are coming off the heels of the earlier 1974 classic film Sidney Lumet directed Murder on the Orient Express, and that starred Albert Finney as Hercule Poirot. Now, if I had to choose one film adaptation that is my absolute favorite Agatha Christie film adaptation, it would have to be Sidney Lumet's Murder on the Orient Express. I think that film is absolutely a masterpiece. I have seen it countless times. I can't even keep count. I've seen it so many times. I think I have some of the passages memorized. I remember when I was a kid growing up too, I had the Poirot, the final Poirot act where he reveals all. I had that entire speech memorized. And so I always had fun just reciting it when I was in my room or something like that. Murder on the Orient Express. So that is my absolute favorite film adaptation of an Agatha Christie novel. But if I had to pick one of the Agatha Christie adaptations that was so meaningful to me as a kid, it would be this film, the film Death on the Nile. Again, with Peter Ustinov, directed by John Guillermin. It features a great cast: David Niven as Colonel Race, Mia Farrow, Simon McCorkindale, Angela Lansbury, and Olivia Hussey, and Jack Warden, Betty Davis, Maggie Smith. It's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. George Kennedy. It's just John Finch. Excuse me. Yes, it's such a great cast, and Nino Rota score. So brilliant film, and I point to this film because when I was a kid growing up in the UK in the 80s, mid to late 80s. So I would have been around maybe 7, 8, or 9 or so. That was the period when I first discovered the world of Agatha Christie. And it was twofold, of course. First, it was directly through the works of literature of Agatha Christie that you could get in any W.H. Smith, or you could go to the library or whatever. And if you bought them, you could get them on those great Fontana paperback editions that were £2.50 at the time. And so there was that line. And then the other line that of my discovery of Agatha Christie was through the adaptations, whether they be on TV. There was the great BBC Miss Marple TV show. Agatha Christie's Poirot was just about to air, but it was before that airing, in fact. So I was a kid in this time period. And I remember the first film that I saw, it was broadcast on TV, or I remember seeing, was the film Death on the Nile. The first Agatha Christie adaptation I think I remember seeing was Death on the Nile, as I say, as broadcast on TV. It was slightly edited. It wasn't the complete version. I seem to recall there were some passages that were edited. I think, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's Maggie Smith plays a character called Miss Bowers, and one of her scenes where she's talking with Hercule Poirot, I think, was a little bit trimmed down, but it didn't affect the overall flow of the film. Although it was a particularly odd edit, in my opinion, if you think about it. But I don't want to get into too many details. But the point is that this was the first time that I saw an Agatha Christie film adaptation, and it was Death on the Nile, again, broadcast on TV. And my life changed. My life changed so much. I recorded it. It was on a VHS, and I played that thing so many times. And so it was just a wonderful opportunity to experience this world. And I think it was a shock to me also because of all the violence. Because this is quite a violent film. It's not overtly violent. It's not like a horror fest of that magnitude. But it is a very intense work that does have some shocking scenes to it. And when I saw it as a kid, seeing these shocking moments really shocked me. And they really scared me. So even now, when I see the film, I tend to wince at certain aspects of it. There are also words and phrases and terminology, sometimes legal related, that as an 8-year-old, I had no idea what they were talking about. I was trying to go along with it. So it helped me to pick up some of the lingo. Like there's a line about, there's a very famous line, "You cannot libel the dead." And I was always thinking, what is this word libel? What does the word libel mean? And so I didn't know that until I tried to look it up. And it exposed me to all these very interesting words and phrases that I wouldn't have known the meaning of if I was 7, 8, or 9 or so. And it exposed me to this world of where language was very important, where every little detail was so potentially a new clue. And so you'd watch the film and you just try to absorb everything you could, at least I did. And then it had an interesting structure about how it would be an instance where Poirot would be interrogating each of the suspects. And with each interrogation, it would be this kind of imaginary flashback of what Poirot might be imagining, how this suspect could have carried out the crime had he or she actually done it. So it's sort of a faux or imaginary flashback type of structure that he engages with each of the suspect interrogations. Plus we have the idea of what we see played out on cinema is not necessarily what we are meant to what we see is not necessarily what we believe it is, and so it's potentially such that a scene in this film can have a double meaning or even a triple meaning sometimes. And so when you figure out what happened and you go and watch the film again, which is what I did, I would just try to examine every little aspect of how this particular scene has this meaning and it also has that meaning, because if you know the ending, you'll know that it has a significance that is much deeper than upon initial viewing. And with that kind of excitement in the air, I would just try to absorb every single detail that I could when I watched this film. And I watched this film constantly. I did a video a long time ago about movies that I saw on a loop. And I don't think I mentioned this film, Death on the Nile, but I could have, because it's another one of those loop films for me. I think I know this film, I know its rhythm so well, and all the characters and some of the scenes too. The dialogue has never left me. And I also learned words that weren't English. When Poirot says the word, they're gone, vanished, and he pulls his napkin from his collar, and he says the word disparu. And disparu, I didn't know what that was, but I assumed it must have been French, because he was speaking on and off. He was speaking the French language with another character that was also of course, Hercule Poirot is Belgian, but he was able to converse in the French language with another character, Louise Bourget, who was played by Jane Birkin. And so in that dialogue exchange, there was this word used, disparu, which I learned later, of course, is the past tense form of the verb in French that means disappear. So it disappeared, so vanished. And so that was, and they're talking about a particular item of some import that has vanished. And so I learned a word, disparu, or at least I got a sense of what that could mean, and I was able to confirm the meaning later on in my French studies. And then there was another word that was used when Poirot is talking with the character played by Jack Warden. Jack Warden's character is Dr. Ludwig Bessner. And there's an exchange between Poirot and Dr. Bessner about, and the word irrelevant comes up. Poirot says something about something being irrelevant. And then Dr. Bessner, he doesn't know the English word irrelevant, what it means. And so Poirot then tries to explain in what I assume is German. And he says, unanwendbar. And then Dr. Bessner just goes essentially ballistic. He's like, unanwendbar. He's so insulted. Me, unanwendbar. So I learned this word, unanwendbar. So my pronunciation, of course, is very, very poor. But the point I wanted to bring up is that this was a really splendid film to be able to watch. Disparu, unanwendbar. And others, libel. You can't libel the dead. And other things like that. Watching this at 7, 8, 9, my goodness, it was just the information flow from this to my brain was really intense, and I was enjoying every second of it. Not to mention the fact that it was, like I said, such an exciting, frightening, and really shocking thing to watch, and it just made me love Agatha Christie and her world all the more. And so this is one of my absolute favorites. If I had to pick my top favorite, it would have to be Murder on the Orient Express. But in terms of my own personal journey through the world of Agatha Christie, this film, Death on the Nile, is so key. And I can even go one step further and say that without this film, Death on the Nile, I don't think my love of cinema would be as strong as I hope it is right now. In other words, without this film, I don't know. I think I would just be, at most, a very maybe casual viewer of cinema. And so I owe this film a lot. in terms of what it allowed me to do in opening my eyes, not just to the world of Agatha Christie as adapted in film, but also the world of film writ large. So this is Death on the Nile and its importance to me. I love this film so much. I know there's going to be the new Kenneth Branagh version of Death on the Nile. I'm anticipating that, of course, but if I am going to be perfectly honest, I'm going to say that this is a film that is one that I cherish very, very much, and I will try to watch the Branagh version with an open mind. But also, I can't deny just how much I love this film. I love this film so much. I love everything about this, and so yeah. But we shall see when the Branagh version comes out. But in any event, we still have this remarkable adaptation, and I'm so happy that this Kino Lorber Region A Blu-ray came in. I know it was released in other territories, but I was just waiting for it to come out on a Blu-ray like this, and it looks great. I should just add that maybe I should try to spend more time with some of these films, because I haven't spoken at all about Evil Under the Sun, which is one of my cherished murder mystery films. And as much as I love Agatha Christie novels, I think that sometimes her novels are really great, and sometimes her novels can be maybe good, but not really necessarily top level. I would actually say I've read all of her novels many, many times. As much as I admire Evil Under the Sun, the novel, I can say from my own vantage point that the adaptation here, the Guy Hamilton directed film starring Peter Ustinov, Diana Rigg, Roddy McDowall, James Mason, Dennis Quilley, Maggie Smith, and Nicholas Clay, Jane Birkin, and Sylvia Miles, and Colin Blakely, yes, Sir Horace Blatt. What a great name that is, Sir Horace Blatt. But anyway, so what was I saying? So this is a great film that I think tops the novel. It does things that are, of course, in essence based on the novel, but it does things that are new and fresh and inventive, separate from the novel, such that I think that this film adaptation is, for me, much more satisfying in terms of an experience of this story. Again, I think the book is good, but for me, the film it pops, and so I love this film so much. It is, in terms of tone and atmosphere, very different from the proceedings that we got in the earlier film Death on the Nile, and even the earlier film, the Sidney Lumet film Murder on the Orient Express. So we're getting bright sunshine, coast, beautiful locations, the wonderful use of an adaptation of Cole Porter music, and the liveliness, the champagne bubbly feel of what's going on, and then there's always that little sinister edge to the film, and I think it's a great blend of charm, wit, style, humor too, because there's so much humor that we see, I think, much more applied here purposefully than we saw in earlier outings, which I think makes, potentially anyway, this film to be a very lovable kind of experience in the world of Poirot. Peter Ustinov's depiction here is so lovable that it is a lovable, charming, very cute performance, and I love this and again, this is another film that I saw early on as a kid, and I haven't been able to let go. I love this so much, and I'm so glad that this has come to a Region A Blu-ray like this. It's really wonderful. And then I should just point out that there is this film also, The Mirror Cracked, the also Guy Hamilton directed film. This time this is Angela Lansbury, and she plays Miss Marple. And this is another really exciting cast. Rock Hudson is in it. Geraldine Chaplin is in it. Kim Novak is in it. That's a wow. And then of course Elizabeth Taylor is in, and others. And then, as I mentioned, Angela Lansbury is Miss Marple. This film is something else. This is a kind of it's an interesting novel, that's for sure. In the context of Agatha Christie's Miss Marple novels, it comes a little bit later in Agatha Christie's novel career, and so it is a later period film, and that later periodness, I think, is reflected really nicely in the interesting culture clash between quaint England, as represented by St. Mary Mead on the one hand, and America and the Hollywood filmmaking machine, as it's depicted in of course, a period manner, but still is depicted in this film. So we have this wonderful blend of culture clash that I think lends itself very nicely to this idea of a quaintness that's giving rise to maybe, for lack of a better phrase, a sort of modernization. But that's always in the background. But in the foreground is, of course, this quaint murder mystery that is actually something that is wow. Talk about the way in which Agatha Christie links the quaintness of murder mysteries with the deep-rooted psychological. You're getting it in the story. The novel is called The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, and they've shortened the title here, The Mirror Cracked. But you're getting that here in this confectionery that is, of course, highlighted by many stars in some really wonderful turns and performances. I love, in particular, the scenes between Elizabeth Taylor and Kim Novak. Oh, it's just so seething with so much hate and spite. Oh, it's so great. It's great. And rivalry. It's so wonderful. And the scenes between Rock Hudson and Elizabeth Taylor, too. There is a real warmth and tenderness there that it reminds us just how great these stars are, and they are really, really great. And then it's headed off by Angela Lansbury, who gives a very interesting interpretation of the character of Miss Marple. I'm not sure, I don't want to go into specifics, of course. I mean, there might be other performances of Miss Marple that I maybe personally prefer. I will always go to the Joan Hickson BBC TV series of Miss Marple. But even with that, I think that this film and Angela Lansbury's performance, I think, does the story justice, and it really serves to show us the sharp intellect of Miss Marple. Nothing can get by her. And I remember there. I don't want to get into too much details, but there's a lovely moment where we see Miss Marple sleeping in the night. It's just a very innocent scene, and suddenly she just wakes up and she has a eureka moment. And those little scenes, I think, are so quaint and lovely and earnest. And that's an example of the tone of this film. It's an earnest film, I think, that also has a way that can be very unnerving in a very purposefully designed way that still tries to maintain a sense of fidelity and trueness, if you will, to the spirit of Agatha Christie and the story, The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side. So I'm so happy to have this. I'm so very happy to have this. So, and then there are others, of course. I don't want to go into too much detail, but there are other Kino Lorber Blu-ray releases of Agatha Christie adaptations that, if you're interested, I would strongly recommend very much. Probably the most famous one is this one, The Witness for the Prosecution, which is an all-time classic. But if you have time for a really interesting, quirky one, there is Ordeal by Innocence, really, really underrated. With this Blu-ray, I must say that I've grown to admire this film very much. I know it has its detractors, and I know there are some, I think, very reasonable criticisms of this film, but even so, there is a lot of worth to this. So I'm just so glad. But well done, Kino Lorber, for doing this, and I'm just over the moon. I'm very thrilled, and I'm just waiting for Murder on the Orient Express, Sidney Lumet film. 1974, as I say, my absolute favorite film adaptation of an Agatha Christie novel. And so hopefully it will arrive on a Region A Blu-ray or something. I don't know. Will it be under Kino? Will it be somewhere else? Who knows? Criterion? I don't know. But if it, whatever the case may be, I hope it arrives, and if so, I would look forward to that so much, and maybe that will give me the opportunity to talk a little bit more about that and others. But in the meantime, my friends, I'm sorry to go on like this, but I just want to express to you my excitement and my happiness for being able to receive a number of these. I feel very fortunate and very lucky to have been able to get these in the mail. So I had, when I saw them, I had to pre-order them, and so and I did, and they arrived at last. And so and going back to what I was saying earlier, one of my earliest movie experiences that I still remember to this day, Death on the Nile. So anyway, my dear friends, sorry about that, and I hope you can forgive me. And until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you once again for your time, as always, my dear friends, and cheers.